There is a movement no one prepares for you. The strongest people I know don't break because they're fragile. They break because they're strong enough to ignore the warning signs.
First it whispers, then it talks, then it yells, and then it will paralyze you.
So in the military and leadership circles, the culture is that people don't say I'm struggling. They say I'm just tired. Asking for help does not feel like support. It feels like failure. Like you're risking your credibility, your identity.
What happens when your rank no longer matters?
So if someone listening believes they're strong enough to handle it, but something in their body knows otherwise, what would you say to them?
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
This conversation is for the people who don't think this conversation is for them. There is a movement no one prepares for you. It's not when bullets fly. It's not when deadlines pile up. It's not even when sleep disappears. It's a movement when the thing that made you strong stops working. Discipline, endurance, self-control. The trait that earned respect, rank, and responsibility suddenly becomes a reason you're exhausted, disconnected, and silently drowning. In the military, in leadership, in high performance cultures, we are taught to push through, to carry the weight, to handle it. And the better you are at handling it, the harder it becomes to admit when you are not. Asking for help does not feel like support. It feels like failure, like you're risking your credibility, your identity, your place in the formation. That's what this episode is about. Not weakness, not mental illness labels, but the hidden truth that many of the strongest people I know don't break because they're fragile. They break because they're strong enough to ignore the warning signs. Today, we're talking about burnout, stress, and the nervous system, not as personal flaws, but as predictable outcomes of living in constant mission mode. My guest today is Lauren, founder of Spitfire Coach. She works with leaders, veterans, and high performers who don't see themselves as struggling until their body forces the conversation. The very little time talking about resilience actually costs the human body. Lauren LeMunyan is a founder of Spitfire Coach, where she works with leaders, veterans, and high achievers who are outwardly successful but internally exhausted. Her work is not about motivation. It is about grinding harder. It's about understanding how chronic stress, burnout, and unrelenting responsibility reshapes the nervous system, and why so many capable, disciplined people don't realize they are in the trouble they are until their body forces them to stop. Lauren helps people recognize the warning signs early, when they are still functional, still leading, still saying, I'm fine, even as the internal cost keeps rising. What makes her voice especially important for this mission is that she speaks in the language of strength, not pathology. She helps people see that needing support is not a personal failure. It's a systems issue, a load issue, a sustainability issue. In other words, this conversation is for the people who don't think this conversation is for them. Lauren, welcome to the second tour. I'm really glad you're here and grateful for the work you're doing. Before we go into the framework or tools, I want to start here, not with what you do, but why do it, why you do it. You work with people who are capable, disciplined, respected, people others rely on. When did you first realize that strength and success don't protect people from burning out? They often hide it.
Well, I think thanks so much for having me, Shanthan. This is such a needed conversation, and I am a military spouse of someone who is still active duty. So very, very timely for the conversation. There's a saying in coaching that you have to first experience it before you coach it. And so we all go through our kind of hitting the wall moment where we realize what we've been doing all along doesn't work for what we want to become later on. And to be able to first recognize that in myself, of everything that I had done, I am not just a person who coaches high achievers. I used to be one. And I wore that badge proudly. I could do anything. I could make it happen. I could work all hours. I could be there and bootstrap it and shoestring budget anything. And then I asked myself, at what cost? I had a lot of digestive issues. I wasn't sleeping. tons of inflammation and was just really unhealthy. And on the surface, I looked great. Like I ran a CrossFit gym and I was super strong and could lift more than my body weight over my head. And I thought I was tough. And I didn't think that I could show weakness, because if I had admitted that I didn't have it all together, what would the people that entrusted me with their mission, what would they think? I was running nonprofits and traveling the world and running this CrossFit gym. And there was only so much that I could do in that amount of time. And I wasn't sleeping. So I was sleeping 4 hours a night. And I literally hit the wall. And I realized that it wasn't about the job I was doing. It wasn't about the people that were around me. Even being in an unhappy marriage, it wasn't even about that person. It was what I had been signing myself up for, how I was speaking to myself, how I was treating myself. And I realized that if I wanted to create an overall life overhaul, if I truly wanted to be happy, I had to face those hard truths in the mirror head on. And the first question was, who are you and what makes you happy? And I'll tell you, Shanthan, that was the hardest question to answer. And it's the hardest question for my clients to answer, because they're so used to performing. I'm a doer. I'm a fixer. I'm a builder. They've got label, 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 label. And when it comes down to it is, who are you being? Who are you when those activities don't exist? Who are you in your second and third tour? And when we need to transform, we have to shed that doing mode to truly look inward and create a soul connection. We're going to get a little woo-woo today. I hate to break it to your listeners. But you've got to touch back into who you are and what makes you happy and what brings you joy and what brings you fulfillment and what makes you feel connected to the people around you. Because there's only so many problems that you can fix before you start creating your own.
Was there a specific moment, something is broken in how we define resilience, like a client conversation or something in your own body where you thought, hey, something is broken in how we define resilience?
Yeah. So to me, resilience is a muscle. And I think when people say I'm resilient, it almost creates like this another label, right? It's like, I'm resilient. I can bounce back from anything. And so I think we first need to redefine what resilience is. And it's a muscle that allows you to reflect back and see all of the strength, all of the skills, all of the perspective, whatever it took to get through that moment, and then who you are now as a result of it. Because if we don't take that time to reflect, then we start to recreate similar patterns where we start to prove our resilient nature again and again. And specifically for me, this summer, my husband had a near-death experience. He went in for a surgery to remove a benign tumor in his ear. And a week later, he ended up having a seizure and had bleeding in his brain, and then had meningitis and COVID and a cerebral spinal fluid leak. And so for 3 months of our life, it was touch and go of like, where are we? They didn't have answers for us. And thankfully, he has made a full-on recovery. But, the universe loves a good joke. And so in the middle of all of this, I had a keynote on resilience. So there it is presenting itself. It's like, what are you going to do to be resilient in this moment? Are you going to get angry? Are you going to, cower? Are you going to run away? Are you going to break down? And all of those are acceptable solutions in the moment. But in my line of work and for what I do and how I wanted to show up, I wanted to turn it into a teachable moment, which is really highlighting this need to reflect. So being resilient means that we reflect back, that we understand who we are, that allows us to get through those hard moments so that we don't have to feel and go through them the same way again. It doesn't mean life stops being hard. It just means we have more options to play with as we're navigating through it.
I think the awareness helps. So in the military and leadership circles, the culture is that people don't say I'm struggling. They say I'm just tired. From your perspective, Lauren, what's actually happening under the surface when high performers say they're fine, but they are not?
I'm so glad that you brought up I'm fine, because I call them the 4-letter words. Just, okay, fine. Those are brush over words where we hope that people fall for it and just think, okay, they're okay. We don't have to look any further. So here's your first assignment. Anytime someone says fine, dig a little deeper. What does that mean? What does fine mean? What does okay mean? Sometimes people don't want to answer it, but just know that you're watching and paying attention to other people. That's the first place. But when people say I'm fine, they don't want to have it paid attention to, because that means that they have to then look at what's not working. And so even defining yourself as a high performer, think about what that actually means. It sets yourself up to perform at a level that exceeds what is actually needed. I perform high. So what does that do? It brings the expectation Oh, Shanthan's a high performer. Let's go to Shanthan again. Let's go again and again and again. And so you become the person that carries the weight. And so there's only so much that you can do if you don't have ample resources, the time, sleep, nutrients. Any system would fail under this. So why are you any different? You're not that special. And in fact, you don't want to be that special, because in the army, in the military, you need to have battalions. You have to have groups of people working together. It shouldn't be on one person. And so when you create that system and expectation for yourself, it's creating the heavier load each and every time. And the foundation that supports it becomes cracked, because you're not backfilling it with sleep. You're not recharging. So you become even more fragile, carrying a heavier load.
Just adding on load more and more.
Yeah.
How early does the body start sending warning signals, long before people emotionally admit they have a problem?
Immediately. So I like to tell my clients, first it whispers, then it talks, then it yells, and then it will paralyze you. And the question is, when do you want to start listening? So the whisper sounds more like a sensation in your body. And so the first step here is to connect back into your body. You mentioned your nervous system. Well, your body is this amazing alert system here. And so if you think about when you've been in a stressful situation, where does it show up in your body? Is it in your temple? Is it in your chest? Is it in your shoulders, your lower back? You are literally carrying the stress signal with you. And so the first thing is to pay attention and to notice it. And a lot of times we're in situations where we can't necessarily, remove the stressor. We still have work to do. We still have people that we don't agree with that might rub us the wrong way. But the opportunity here is to notice it and to objectify it instead of personalizing it. I actually just talked to someone about this today. If we notice it and say, I'm having friction, I'm having a conflict with this person or this environment, what are my options right now? Already we're in a solution mode versus, oh, I got to take it on. I'm the high performer. Let me just go, 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 go. Because even performing in stress is creating more stress. You're still grinding, 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 grinding. And at some point you have to look at, is this mine to take on, or who might else be able to hold on to it? Who might else be able to support me in this? And I know that might come off as like, oh, I'm weak if I say I need support. But the strongest leaders are the ones that bring other people up and along with them.
Yes. See, this episode is called Strong Enough to Break. So my question is, why do the most capable people often miss the signals the longest?
Well, define capable. Capable of what? Because you can be capable of performing, but are you capable of seeing and hearing and listening to yourself? Right? So you might be able to do a lot of stuff, but for how long? What's the cost on your relationships, on your health, on your mental well-being? There's always a cost to it. And it doesn't have to be something that happens very short term. It might have a lasting long-term effect. But it's more of like, if you think that you're going to get an award, a major award for pushing hard, it's just not going to happen. And in fact, by being a high performer, you are probably going to be not appreciated in the way that you want, because you're just assumed to do the role without having to get promotions or acknowledgement.
So my next question is, what are the most common signs you see that leaders normalize? Irritability, numbness, overwork, isolation, without realizing that those are the physiological alarms.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is isolation. And we can talk about the loneliness epidemic as part of that. Because when you are in this, I can do it myself, I'm the only one who can do it. What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to take it on yourself. You're not going to go to the human need, which is to connect with other people and build community. And so I would say the first step is probably noticing yourself withdrawing and just going heads down to do it yourself versus pausing and asking those curious questions of like, is this for me to take on? Are there other people who can do it? And I think that's the first thing to pay attention to, because that's usually where you get that kind of like, the crease in your forehead and the weight in your shoulders, because you literally are taking on the weight of the world.
Right. It seems like all the skill set that gets people promoted becomes the blindfold.
Yeah, if you do get promoted, because a lot of times it blinds other people from the other attributes that you have as a leader.
You're right. And then they just keep on investing in the thing that helps, and it's just adding more things.
You become the hammer. It's like, here's a problem, hammer, problem, hammer. And so you become noted as a hammer, not necessarily as someone who is, an inclusive, not even an inclusive leader, but someone who is enjoyable to work with.
I also want to talk about the nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
but not in the academic terms. If you're explaining this to like a platoon leader or a first sergeant or a founder, right? How would you describe what chronic stress does to decision making and emotional control?
Yeah. Well, so I think I shared this statistic last week with a group from Catapult, which was when you are under stress, you are 70% more likely to make mistakes.
Hmm.
Because if you feel like you're going to keep messing up, if you feel like someone's looking over your shoulder, if you're going to fail, you're not focusing on the task at hand. You're worried about everything else and perception or forward, you're skipping steps. And so if you're in this rapid fire, you're going to screw up even more. And so if you're like worried about, I'm going to screw up or I'm going to fail or I've got to take this all on, you're not even focused on what you need to focus on. So your nervous system is responsible for that. So your nervous system is there to help detect if something's a threat or not. And you might be one of those people who have had a positive response to stress where you perform and you are like super successful. Or you might be someone who under stress, it feels like it's going to harm you and you're going to protect yourself. And so if you're on that performing side, it doesn't mean that stress isn't impacting you. It means that you've created a belief system that reinforces this. And so
Right.
it probably has gotten you to this point and you've done just fine. And we're using air quotes if you're just listening to the audio of this. But if you want to go somewhere else outside of the military or outside of the system you've been in, you have to change your belief system and your mindset around it because it doesn't work.
Right. When someone lives in this flight or fight or flight mode for years,
Mm-hmm.
what changes in how they interpret threat or stress at home?
Yeah, they become hyper vigilant.
Hmm.
And I know this from personal experience. When
Yes.
I'm going to use the example from this summer again. Everything that my husband said to me, I was like, we have to go to the hospital or something's wrong or I can't work anymore. Like my body was on high alert. So everything feels like a problem. Like you are literally like this and all of your nerve endings are just like vibrating. And the reason it's doing that is because it's already experienced something very traumatic. And so it's looking for things that you need to watch out for to protect you. And so if we don't figure out how to regulate our nervous system, we are literally like shaking in our nerves all the time. And so it takes work, whether it's, walking or having a mindfulness practice, which feels very out of the range of what most people do. But this is what it takes to tap back into our bodies to like trust ourselves and trust our bodies again. Because right now it's sending all of these warning signs that might actually not be there.
So what people call losing patience or losing motivation is often the nervous system saying, I've been deployed too long.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Yep,
I need a break.
true.
Yeah.
Um,
And
let's
that's also Shanthan, that's the paralyze. Remember we talked about the whisper, talk, yell, and paralyze? That's what burnout is. It will literally paralyze you where you can't get off the couch or get out of bed or a hospital bed if that's where
Yep.
it goes.
My question to you is um, just to take the thing a little different. So the soldiers are used to living in a structured environment for the longest of the time.
Mhm.
They get up in the morning. There is a schedule that they can follow. They go to the office. There is a mission, and the mission has a timeline, right? So
Mhm.
for somebody that has successfully lived in this structured environment, suddenly comes out, and part of the stress could be is that there is no structure.
Mhm.
So what do you suggest how these people should navigate the system in creating the structure for themselves, and to make sure that this lack of structure won't add to the already stress that they have to come out and navigate?
Yeah, I'm so glad you highlighted this because this is one of the most common things that I see pop up when you have lived in a hyper structuralized environment, whether that's in the military, in academia, in a corporate environment, and now you're starting your own business. You go from having pre-scheduled pre-expectations for your career, where you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, like how many steps you're going to take, all those things, how you make your bed, when to submit things, and there's consequences to that, so you have to do it. And now you're in this free reign where the choice is yours, but you don't necessarily have a compass to do that. And so the first step is to really examine, what are your values? What are the things that are most important to you right now and in the future and with your family and with your career goals? This is going to take some time and it might feel like, airy fairy, But this is where you get your true North Star, because the decisions that you make have to go through a lens. They have to go through some sort of filtration device. Otherwise, you will get inundated with messages, shoulda, coulda, wouldas, tons of advice from other people. You're going to read magazines, listen to podcasts, and be totally overwhelmed or make a decision that's not actually for you. So if you want to start creating structures, it then goes through the lens of, you know what supports my value around quality time with my family? What supports my goal around health and wellness? So maybe you create an exercise routine. Maybe you create time aside on the weekends or at night where you take on an element where you're getting quality time with your family. And it's specific to feed and honor that value. And then you can build off of that. So I would recommend starting small, but getting really specific and actionable. Like, what are the things that you can take on that are realistic and repeatable so that it creates a routine and a rhythm that then becomes a ritual versus something that becomes regimented that you're like, okay, this is back in the military. And it's actually not. It's your new routine and your new life.
There's a beautiful book called The Atomic Habits,
Mm-hmm.
where they say you don't have to like change everything in a day,
Yeah.
but create small actions that are repeatable, that are sustainable, and then kind of stick to it, which creates a routine. So basically, doing this helps you gain the structure that you lost now, but you are responsible personally for creating the structure for yourself, and you
Yes.
got to be accountable for yourself. You
Mhm.
don't have a 7 o'clock formation to go and do your PT, but you have to create that for yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
Lauren.
also, it builds momentum. So I would actually say going big too soon is going to be too overwhelming. It's actually going to create that stress and burnout faster. So the more that you can create that actionable micro change creates macro transformations.
Perfect. Now let's go straight at the hardest part. Why does asking for help feel like threat to identity,
Mm.
especially for leaders and service members? Because we are every there is a hyper masculinity that comes out from army, whether you're a female or a male soldier, but when you come out, you are seen by the society as this hardest part, right? You're the toughest part, and at that part, when you have to come down and say somebody that came out of service and now he's in the civilian sector and you want to ask for help,
Mhm.
or it's a leader that feels through self-awareness that he's broken and you want to ask for help, it becomes a big internal fight to say, hey, the identity that I have as a toughest guy, now I have to go and ask. Just wanted to ask from your perspective, how, what is it, what is this identity crisis?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've actually started to see the opposite with just who's around my husband and how that operates, and so I'm hopeful that that has shifted a bit. But I think the big thing is anytime that you have an identity that has whatever interpretations of what it means about strength, weakness, or whatever, I would start to challenge it because what it's going to do is just further isolate you, which is, where we talked about, that the signs of burnout. So whatever is blocking you from making real human connections and actually like building networks, which is what you need once you get out of the military, are things that we need to be investigating and looking at how true is that now? How true is that for me in the future? And who do I want to become outside of the army? That might have been the way that my battalion operated, but it's not how my company and my team operates. In fact, if I just assume I know, I'm kind of going to not be invited to happy hours and kind of be the guy in the corner that nobody really wants to deal with or share coffee with. So it's time to challenge. If it's not working for me, if I'm kind of making up a whole story about it, then maybe I should start putting it into question and see what story I want to tell about myself going forward.
So what story are people telling themselves about what it means if they need support?
I mean, many things. I'm weak. I should have it all figured out. I should have all the answers. Nobody's going to trust me. So and so leader knows it all, blah, blah, blah. All the things. And my thing is, have you ever met someone who knows it all or thinks they do? They suck. Like, they're probably the worst people you ever want to be around.
True. So, why does help feel like dependency instead of maintenance?
I mean, if I knew these answers, I would write a book about it. It's your own personal story to it. It's whatever you've made up about defining help. If help is seen as a lack or, a weakness or seeing as, whatever else you want to make up, like that's going to be your truth. And so challenge the story. Like, I don't know how many times I challenge the story.
Right. I mean, what are people really afraid of losing, right?
Well, yeah, but the thing is, the thing that you're trying to avoid is actually what you're creating. You're creating the fear of loss. You're going to lose out on relationships and opportunities because you're not speaking up. So that's why you got to put it into question, because you actually, what you resist the most is what you need the most.
So it sounds like it's not fear of help, but it's fear of becoming irrelevant
Oh
sometimes.
yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, and that's a huge thing. Like, so we were talking about how what happens when your rank no longer matters. What happens when people stop calling you back? They don't have to call you back because you're a colonel, right?
We were talking about it the
It's a
other day,
huge ego popper.
right?
It hurts.
So for someone listening right now, someone who will never call this burnout, what is one 60-second reset they can do today to interrupt this overload?
Oh, only 60 seconds. So, if you're feeling overloaded, the first thing you do is change your environment. That's the fastest, easiest thing you can do. So, if you're sitting in front of a computer screen and you're stressed out in an email or an interaction you had, change the environment. Get outside, go for a walk if you can. If you can't do that, go get a glass of water. That will start to shift you out. And then what you can do is get a sheet of paper and just ask yourself curious questions about the situation. I'm curious what's happening. I'm curious what I can do about it. I'm curious how I want to feel. This might be too much of a jump, but just start getting what's going on in your brain out on a piece of paper. Give it a space to digest. And then you can come back to it, because what usually is happening in the storytelling is wound up and it's getting other stories connected with it. And it's not actually about what you're stressed out about. And so the more space you can give it outside of your brain, the more you can sort it out in an objective way when you're ready.
Right. So if I have to ask you, what is one daily self question, right, that you recommend that doesn't feel like emotional navel gazing?
I just say, how do I want to show up today? What do I want to be proud of?
Good. It's like a reset for,
Setting your intentions.
right?
Yeah. And also being aware of any avoidant language. So if you say, I don't want to show up as unconfident, I don't want to show up as lazy, I don't want to convert it into something that's positive. So I want to show up as someone who's empowered. I want to show up as someone who's direct and clear and approachable, because that's going to create a neural pathway into a future version of yourself that you can start to attach behaviors to. Where our focus goes is where our energy grows. And so if you're focusing on how you don't want to feel and what you don't want to show up, that's where it's going to go when we use not or never language.
So for leaders listening, commanders, managers, founders, what is one behavior they can model that quietly gives others permission to speak up without making it a big mental health moment?
I'm so glad you used the word model, because in psychological safety, which is the number one attribute of high performing teams, it is an environment of rewarded vulnerability. So when you can model that by showing up and being open and also rewarding other people around you, it then sets the tone that people can drop the guard, that they can ask for help, that they can share about who they are gradually over time. And you reinforce that in every interaction, whether it's on an email, on a Zoom meeting, or in person.
What is one thing that leaders should stop doing immediately that unintentionally reinforces silence?
Oh, sarcasm. And that's so hard for the military, because I know that that is like the second language. Sarcasm is, I think in Greek, it translates to like death by a thousand cuts, because all of that is like these little jabs that's under the guise of humor, and it's really not funny. It's kind of harmful. And so, if you're going to speak, be honest. If you're going to use humor, be playful in a way that acknowledges who the other person is and doesn't poke fun or tear someone else down. But speak clearly. That's the name of the game. Like, I think ambiguity and vagueness and sarcasm are the leading contributors of a lack of psychological safety and a major contributor of stress in environments.
So if someone listening believes they're strong enough to handle it, but something in their body knows otherwise, what would you say to them?
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And you
Okay.
don't have to be the most to be your best.
So again, this conversation is not about breaking. It was about noticing. It is about being self-aware. It is about listening to your body. It's about watching it, wound up, right?
Mhm.
Because asking for help is not an emergency signal; it's a course correction.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
it's a strengthener.
it is a strengthener, right? It's a strength to ask for help, because before you make things worse, right, to yourself
Mhm.
and for everybody,
Mhm.
knowing when you need to ask for help is a strength, actually.
Mhm.
And again, coming from the military background, we're all about mission success and success. The early that you identify there is a risk to the mission, and
Mhm.
when you are out and you're in second tour, when your life is your mission, knowing those signs, those stressors early, and not knowing is absolutely fine. As
Mhm.
you mentioned, not everybody knows, but knowing where to go, where to seek from help.
Mhm.
What would you suggest? Other than knowing yourself, like, hey, any outside sources, any books, friends, anything that you can help us, kind of, like outside resources.
Well, I have to plug my podcast because that's a great resource. So
Please, it's a
it's
good
called
segue.
it's called
Perfect.
the Spitfire Podcast, and so it has actionable tips there, and we have lots of resources like the values exercise that I mentioned, to help you kind of explore that on your own. But this is somewhere where tapping into coaching, tapping into counseling and therapy. If therapy is not your jam, coaching's awesome. There's a lot of great resources, especially for veterans. If there's financial considerations, there's a lot of nonprofits that actually will help match you with a coach. And this is a growing need for people who are making the transition into their second tour, to help make sense of new structures and transitioning your skills from the military into civilian life and professionalism. And what does that look like when you're, having to put a suit on and not a uniform? So absolutely, there's a ton of resources there. Coaching's awesome. I'm going to plug it all day, every day.
Perfect. Lauren, one more question. I want to stay here for a moment and ask, in your work, is there a specific point, a moment when someone crosses from, hey, I got this, I can manage this, into a state where things start to unravel quickly?
Yeah, it's usually really close after that. Because if you're trying to convince yourself, I got this, everything's fine, who are you lying to?
So, what are the subtle signs that tell you that this person waited for too long?
I usually see it in their face immediately. Like, people can't hide things from me. Like, some people really try, but it's the language they use. It's like when people repeat the same word over and over again. And I'm like, what's that about? I can see it, with tension lines or bags under their eyes because they haven't slept, or, even the little veins in their neck when they're just there, and hypertension. And yeah, I mean, it's all there. But in my line of work, it's not for me to call out until the client makes it their goal of the session. So I'm not here to judge you. If here's the thing, if you think it works for you, great. If it's not working for you, let's have a conversation.
So, from the outside, they look composed, reliable, mission capable, but
They really
internally,
don't.
the
They think they do, but I can see it. I can see
system
it.
is overloaded, so it's hard to.
You're not fooling anybody. The jig is up.
So, if I have to ask you, emotional suppression versus emotional control,
Oof.
how do you separate these two ideas that often get confused?
Mhm.
Right, emotional control versus emotional suppression. In performance culture, we praise control,
Mhm.
but where does suppression quietly slip in, and why don't people notice it happening?
Yeah. So emotional control, I will say this. We all have emotions, but in emotional control, we're assessing what's the appropriate environment for me to express it or to let it out. With emotional suppression, it has nowhere to go. We're just bottling it up, putting it on the shelf, hoping nobody notices. And so you've seen what happens with pressure over time. It's just going to pop off when we don't want it to, probably in the most inopportune times. And so to have emotional control is to acknowledge, I'm having an emotional experience right now, but I'm going to give myself 5 minutes after this meeting to like go scream in my car, or to go cry it out, watching a movie at home, or journaling it out. Like, you're giving yourself a dedicated time and space in order to express it. But I see so many times people thinking that they're emotionally controlled, but really they're suppressing it, and they're not giving themselves this space to really give that energy a home.
So, why does so many leaders, why do so many leaders believe suppression is discipline?
I don't know, because somebody taught them that. Somebody lied to them. I don't know.
But I completely agree with you. Suppression shows up in the body before it ever shows up in words,
Yeah.
right? Discipline without awareness eventually becomes like a self erasure.
Yeah. You're like beating yourself up all the time. For what?
So a lot of people listening can hold it together at work or in uniform,
Mhm.
uh, but fall apart at home.
Mhm.
From what you've seen, why does the collapse often happen away from the mission space?
Because it's safe to do so. So you end up where you feel safest is where your emotions come out. And so if we don't know how to properly process those emotions, they can come out as rage, which, we don't even need to talk about the domestic violence, statistics in the military to know that that's what's happening. When you don't have constructive deconflicting skills, that's what happens. And so it's not safe in mission to have an emotional response. There's lives that could be lost. So you have to hold it all in and it bottles up. And so where you feel safe, if you open a little bit of the lid, it goes pops off. So if we don't have tools and processes in order to offload those emotions, then it comes out in one fell swoop.
Asks for bigger cost at home. So
Mm-hmm.
why does chronic stress? What does chronic stress do to intimacy, patience, and presence with family?
You're completely null and void. If you think about burnout and stress, like you have no drive for anything. You're going to perform at work because you have to, you need a paycheck, but you're putting all of your energy in that. And so you're void. So intimacy, you got nothing because you got no energy to connect with anybody. And you're probably not motivated to do much of anything unless you feel like something is dependent on it, like you have to do it. So the desire to do anything that is something you want to do is probably not there. You're probably not connecting with friends. And that's when it shows up as chronic. So when it starts to change like the fabric of your being, like who you used to be, the fun person to hang out with, and now you're isolated and you don't want to do the things you used to do, that's a chronic stress symptom.
So the place where um, everyone should feel safe becomes a place where the nervous system finally drops the armor, and then it's just you don't have the energy to keep it together,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah. But we need that. Like I want to also stress that falling apart is okay. Like, you've been holding up the armor for a long time, and that's exhausting in itself. So, breaking down is essential to building up. It's just a matter of like, what is it that you need in that moment? What support do you need? And who do you have to lean on to help rebuild you?
Yep. So my other why does what does healthy support system looks like that doesn't turn into like dependency at home, like
Yeah.
this is your partner that's
Hmm.
actually trying to help you through what is happening at work, what is happening to you mentally,
Hmm.
and they are looking for signs long before you experience them in person, right?
Hmm.
Just kind of wanted to take a moment here and ask you, what should the healthy support system look like?
Yeah, I would highly recommend getting friends outside of your family, and that includes siblings and, cousins, like outside of that, because your family is biased into your short-term well-being. And so they will always select the quick win. Like, I want to make sure you're okay right now. And you need people who want to see you win, who want to see you succeed, who will challenge you when you're acting a fool. And so that might be outside of people that you know. And so that's why building new friendships when you're in new environments can really be helpful, whether that's a mentor, whether that's a coach, whether that's people with shared interests, whether they're sports or activities or things that you do, civic interests. But it has to be outside of your family because your partner is holding your emotional weight already. And to then be responsible for helping you improve and do everything else while they are also managing their life in the household or whatever else they've got going on, they're going to break under it. And I think that is why having networks and communities of people around you outside of family that can help you and challenge you and can see your blind spots and gaps and help to call those out in a supportive way is the key to all of this.
So it's not like if you're asking for help, it means you're like handing off responsibility, but you're actually it's a reinforcement,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. And I think the big thing is get clear on what help you need. And I think that's the main reason why people don't ask for help is because they don't actually know what help they need. And when you're in that burnout phase, when you're feeling so like just out of sorts, you're like, I don't even know what I need. And so sometimes you just need to offload and vent. But be clear, like, I just need an ear right now, or I just need someone to listen, or I just need someone to walk with me or sit with me. And that feels really raw and vulnerable. But that first step, that ask of, can you just hear me? Can I just talk to you? Is such a strength builder. Like, I get chills talking about it, because when you can ask for that type of help, that is a huge door opener to amazing relationships that you're going to have in the future.
I think it's a perfect segue into my next question. Language that opens doors.
Mm.
What to say and what not to say, right? It matters. What are some phrases people should stop using with themselves? Things that quietly increases pressure.
I have to do it. I can't do this. You are this person, whatever label it is. I do this because I'm a high performer. Like, whatever the label is, like, if it's not serving you, you got to rip it off the jar.
Right. And as we talked about the phrases, that you should stop saying to yourself, my next question is, what are a few phrases that actually lower nervous system load? Things people can say intentionally or out loud to themselves without feeling weak.
Okay, so here are two that will absolutely work. I'm curious and I wonder.
Hmm. Okay.
And follow it up with a question.
Right.
I'm curious. I'm curious how I might look at this differently. I'm curious what today could bring. I'm curious how I'm going to show up.
Opens a new door. Completely
Many
changes
doors.
possibility.
The
Yeah.
whole line of doors.
Right. And some things like, I don't need to solve this today.
No.
I can pause without quitting,
Yeah.
or this reaction makes sense to normalize.
And also, it's okay to quit.
It's okay to quit.
It's okay to quit if it doesn't serve me.
Right.
That's the amazing thing. You can quit missions now.
I mean, if you know it's not working, just running missions for the sake of the mission is only more harmful to you and your team when you know it doesn't serve the purpose.
Yep.
One thing, Lauren, we don't talk about enough is people don't just burn out from stress; they burn out also from never standing down. Right? Why is it hard for high performers to exit mission mode? Because we talked about quitting missions, right? Even for temporarily, they are at it and they completely are on the mission mode, right? So why is it hard to kind of exit that mentality of mission mode?
I think it comes down to the sunk cost fallacy. Is you've put so much time and energy into it, you couldn't possibly give up now. You got to keep going because so much is at stake. Your reputation, you put your name on the line, it's your rank, it's everything else. It's whatever identity you have made up that connects to the completion of the mission.
Right. And feel like if they take a break, that rest feels unsafe for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think rest is just as important as action. I am a full 8-hour sleeper a night. I got 10 hours of sleep the other night. It was glorious. And I have an 18-month-old.
Well, I mean, again, we also have to think that with all the issues that people that deployed, that come back home, another big loud screaming thing is sleep issues. Could be because of sleep apnea, could be because of stress, it could be because of vigilance. Sleep is sometime, because of the pain or whatnot. It's sometimes hard to get. As sleep is such an important part of this entire ecosystem of feeling refreshed tomorrow. What are some of the things that have worked where people can work in trying to get that full sleep?
Okay, so 2 things. Number 1, journal. Get a spiral bound notebook, and I want you to do 5 minutes of just brain dumping. Whatever's on your mind, just put it on paper. If it's a to-do list for tomorrow, I don't care. If it's your fears, if it's your joy, if it's your gratitude, put it on paper, because all the stuff that's in your brain is going to try to process later on. So it'll probably wake you up about 1 to 3 a.m. if you don't do this. The other tool that I absolutely love is called Yoga Nidra, Nidra. And it's a full body scan meditation where it basically will shut your brain off, and all you're going to focus on is like your thumb, your second finger, like as simple as that. You just have to follow along. And I use it myself. I've been using it for years, and it's what puts me back to sleep and puts me to sleep initially, and just helps to clear all that gunk that's in my
I
brain.
remember my dad teaching. We grew up, learning yoga, and it's called shavasana, where you just lay down.
Yeah, that corpse.
Right. Exactly. And from the tip of your foot, you just basically think that, okay, now, it's heavy and it's fall down. And then you just move your awareness from part to part, all the way up. And before we get to the head, we used to start snoring. So
Yeah.
it works great.
That's awesome.
my next question is, if mission zero is preventing crisis before it happens, what are the earliest and the quietest interventions that actually work?
So I like to take it from a different angle. So what is on the other side of crisis? And how do we start building solutions to counter that, to counter the crisis? Because if our energy's on the crisis and preventing the crisis, guess what we're focusing on? The
Focusing on
crisis.
this, yes.
So think about, what is life without crisis? What is this world we're living in, the missions we're having? Like, what is it we're trying to create? Because if we're always thinking about what's the next problem, what's the next crisis, we're going to keep looking for it.
I see. I get it. I think what I was asking from the perspective of, like, what should people pay attention to long before the panic, the rage, the numbness show up?
Yeah. Those micro sensations in your body, wherever you're feeling tension, pay attention to it.
So prevention isn't dramatic. It's not like a Superman coming and helping. It's very boring. But
it's so boring.
It's lives.
I want to be unemployed because everybody does this. Right. I mean, not really, but yeah, I want a new line of work. Okay.
You want to work yourself out of a job.
Yes.
You want everybody.
What a dream, right?
So true. So true. There is always someone listening who thinks, this is interesting, but it's not for me. Mm-hmm. Like, based on your experience, what does that person usually not see yet?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just tell you a little story. It took me 13 months before I signed on with a coach, because I thought I had it all figured out. And I thought life coaching were a bunch of woo-woo people that didn't know what they were doing, and I could just fix my life. And I couldn't. And it wasn't until I had that conversation that everything changed for me. So if it's not for you, then what is for you? What does work for you? But if it's not working for you, if your life isn't working for you in the way that you have it structured, every coach is different. In the same way that you pick a doctor or you pick a football team, I don't know. You got to get a chemistry that works. And so not every coach is for you. Not every doctor is for you. So find the one that does work for you. And you'll see what can happen when you get that good fit.
Right. Amazing. See, Lauren, before we move towards closing, I want to stay with the people listening who are still holding everything together. If they take nothing else from this part of the conversation, what do you hope stays with them tonight in this entire conversation? What is the few things that you hope that stick with them?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, you are still amazing. You are still worthy. You are still valuable, even if you do less. You don't have to do it all and be a rock star to be amazing in this world and to have value. And so just know that you're more than enough. You've done enough. You've paid your dues, and it's okay to offload a little bit. It doesn't mean you have to let everything go, but you can let some things go and lighten your load.
Thank you, Lauren. Before we end, I want to speak directly to the person who is still holding everything together. The one who listens to this entire conversation and thought, this is helpful, but I'm still okay. Here is the truth. Most people don't break because they're weak. They break because they're disciplined, because they're capable, because they learn how to ignore their own warning signals in service of the mission, in service of the nation. And that skill, when it's used too long, comes at a cost. If something in your body reacted during this episode, a tight chest, a shallow breath, a moment of recognition, that's not failure, that's awareness. You don't need to hit rock bottom to justify support. You don't need a diagnosis. You don't need permission. Asking for help is not an emergency signal. It's maintenance. It's actually leadership. It's choosing to stay in the fight longer without sacrificing yourself. So here is the call to action. First, do one small check-in today. Not a life audit. Just ask yourself, what does my body need right now? Second, reach out to that one person you trust. You don't have to explain everything. You can simply say, I don't need solution. I just need to be heard. And third, if this episode resonated, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who carries a lot and never talks about the weight. Because silence doesn't mean strength. It just means you have been carrying it alone. Lauren, again, thank you for bringing clarity, grounded truth, and language that honors strength without glorifying self-destruction. And to everybody listening, this is the second tour. The mission doesn't end when the uniform comes off, and neither does your responsibility to yourself. Stay aware, stay connected, and remember, You don't have to break to ask for help. Thank you all for listening.